Welcome back, everybody, to What's Next Beyond Service. Today is episode number 36. It's He Knows Logistics, and it's spelled at the end, kind of like his last name. And the last name of the person joining us today is Chris Thibodeaux. Chris, welcome to the program.
Hey, Scott. Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you for your time today. I know you're a very busy man, and finding time to come on and break bread with us here on the show is very significant, and we want to thank you for your time in doing that. Chris served for 21 years in the Marine Corps. He retired in 2012. He currently is the Service Support Director at San Diego County Sheriff's, and that's a very significant job. And we're going to talk a bit about that probably towards the end of the interview. This kind of laying things on the table up front here. Chris and I are friends. We served as Marines together. Most notably, our time together. We touched, bases a couple years prior to 2008, but we were more involved working together in 2008 to 2010. He was at 1st Marine Expeditionary Force. He was in the G4, and he was doing a lot of things that involved us getting into Afghanistan to take the lead, the Marine Corps. And so you can imagine how busy that time was, because it was a new thing for the Marine Corps to do in Afghanistan, but you got to get there. And getting there requires sending people, equipment, supplies. There's, construction that has to happen. I mean, there's just a whole multitude of things. And it was interesting. I was at, so just real quick, 1st Marine Expeditionary Force was the higher headquarters for 3 major subordinate commands. You have the division, you have the air wing, then you have the logistics folks at the logistics group. And I was with the air wing at the time. And Chris was riding herd over all of the stuff that units need to take with them to be effective. And we had to decide who's giving up what to go forward. And, the stuff that you give up means that your command doesn't have that anymore necessarily. And it's going forward to the collective good. And you can imagine how interesting it was, taking things from folks and telling them, hey, that's nice, but, it's got to go, and you got to have a great explanation for why you think it shouldn't go. And, it's just, you get into the weeds on that stuff. And you see a lot of interesting things that come from that. But I just, it was difficult enough for me to do that at the air wing, because I was the guy in charge of logistics for the wing. Chris was doing it for all the other folks like me. It's like herding cats, and he was very artful. He never got upset. I mean, I'm sure he did behind closed doors, but he was always the honest broker, and he kept a cool, calm, and collect, more than I probably ever did. So, Chris was someone that was easy to connect with, a good guy, always a smiling face, even when it, wasn't a time to necessarily smile. He always had that way of bringing the folks together. And that's one of the reasons why, we're friends, because he's that kind of a guy. So anyhow, getting back to you, Chris. So you did spend 21 years in the Marine Corps, and let's begin there, if we can. Let's talk about your why. So if you can share with us why you went into the Marine Corps, and then from there, you can just kind of go through and tell us a bit about the things that you felt were significant in your career.
Well, my dad was a Marine, served in Vietnam. My godfather, his brother, also a Marine during the same, time period. So I guess you could say I was maybe drawn to the Marines. And I had a heck of a recruiter in high school, who later retired as a CW4 and remains a friend to this day. So one, I was always, drawn to the Marine Corps, and kid in small town Louisiana. You had a very good academic record. I played some sports, but I did a lot of speech and debate. So I knew I could go to school. I just found myself very much drawn to the Marine Corps. So when I was a senior and I turned 17, I enlisted in the delayed entry program. And then somehow during that process, or somewhere during that process, I also applied for a Naval ROTC scholarship. and was accepted to Tulane University. So I knew I would go into the Marine Corps one way or the other. I decided to accept my scholarship and take the officer route. My recruiter, his name was Kim McKinney. To this day, he actually says I'm his only delayed entry program discharge ever. And the fact that I spent 21 years on active duty and retired as a lieutenant colonel does not absolve him of the discharge. So it's still a bit of a a bit of a running joke. I really think I got more to my why on one of my summer cruises. Myself and a couple of other Marine option midshipmen were on the USS Nassau, LHA-4, in the summer of 1988. And as soon as we were walking up the bow, the combat cargo assistant, Master Wasco, saw the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor on our shoulder boards, and he immediately grabbed all the Marines. So I spent the next 4 to 5 weeks actually working for combat cargo, doing an ammo unrep, an inventory, actually getting a chance to see what a Marine Corps logistician might be, or what Marines were actually doing, I think more in the fleet and the operating forces. And lo and behold, I became a logistician just a few years later. So like I said, I think I actually I knew I was leaning toward the Marine Corps, but I think I got to my why and what I really wanted to do. And my dad would always ask me, well, what about after? What about after? I couldn't imagine after college, much less after a Marine Corps career. But I think those were some pretty poignant questions from my dad that I think have helped steer me as a logistician with some of those skills to where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you mentioned the fact that your dad and, another family member or in the Marine Corps, it kind of becomes the family business. I'm sure it's like that in the other branches too, but it's not uncommon that, when you come across Marines, they're not necessarily the first one that's ever been in the Marine Corps in their family. It seems to be something that becomes a bit of a tradition. Yeah, my grandfather served in the Marine Corps. He was in Second World War, and he was in the Battle of Tarawa, came back and, went into the federal firefighting service for 35 years. So he was a person of service. And you talk about, the why thing and getting into the guts of an amphib and seeing all the things that happen to, make things happen logistically. I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's what it's all about as a Marine. In fact, the Marine Corps is trying to, kind of figure that piece out a little more now, as they're changing up a few things. But yeah, that's absolutely, that's, I remember my time with the MEF, or excuse me, with the MEU, 15th MUSOC, flying over, coming into Kuwait and seeing things from the helicopter, the ships and other things moving ashore, and other, just seeing it all play out. It goes into your mind of all the things that, you studied, all the things that you supported. And then when you see yourself doing it in real time, it's very surreal. It's so it's an incredible feeling. So
yeah, it was definitely the first time as an aspiring Marine or young Marine that I could actually see what this career might unfold and look like. I actually saw Marines doing Marine things and had a chance to to participate in that a bit. It really got real at that point.
Oh, sure. And so moving forward in your time as a Marine, are there any significant events or stories that you want to share with us while we got you
here? Graduated from logistics school and got assigned to 1st Battalion 2nd Marines, Camp Lejeune. Went out with 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit and spent quite a few months on 2 separate occasions in 1993, in Somalia. So again, you talk about coming ashore for the first time and, actually seeing a real world, peacekeeping and humanitarian support operation, going on. I really felt like, wow, this is all really coming together. And then I got assigned a recruiting duty as a B billet, and whoa, I think like every young company grade officer getting assigned to that first, B billet, that non-operating force billet, I had an MBA packet sitting on my desk, and I really struggled with whether or not, I would stay in the Marine Corps. Of course I did. But I had the opportunity to serve as a regimental combat team S4 in Iraq during the Battle of Fallujah. a little bit of time with Division G4 as the OPSO, and of course my time with 1MEF for over 3 years as the deputy and acting, and then Chief CJ4 for a time when we were in Afghanistan as part of Regional Command Southwest. The B billets I did have on recruiting duty, 3 separate tours over 8 years, and I kept doing well, so they kept sending me back. On one hand, I've been told that I was actually pigeonholed, and maybe that curtailed some opportunity for advancement. But at the same time, the skills I learned and the opportunities I had were just invaluable. They were amazing. The operations officer and executive officer of a small 50-man recruiting station in Jacksonville, Florida, spread across 3 states. Just the autonomy and the chance to go out there and help Marines be successful. I'll never forget that. Had a great CO, Dave Kewen, still a friend to this day. I can't really forget that and how much it helped shape me. One of the few commands in the Marine Corps where you have a major who has a sergeant major, even for such a very small command. So a chance to just have that one-on-one daily, interaction with a senior staff NCO to continue to mentor me, definitely taught me some things, as I went, throughout my career. And I don't regret any of those choices, because some of them were choices. I did have an opportunity to say, maybe I should go here, vice here. But I went back and I kept continuing to apply, the skills that I had learned, and also continue to develop myself in the hopes of making other, Marines better. And, the procurement pipeline, the recruiting and officer accession pipeline, and recruit training, I mean, they're brutal. But we see the results of it in the fleet. And if we don't have people who, pay enough attention and spend enough time on that end, we won't ever reap the benefits, with our units when we get out there.
That's right. And it's rewarding too, to do just that. And, a couple of things real quick, Chris, talk about that B billet, and, sometimes the B billet can come faster than maybe you thought. Right. And it came quick for me too. I did it in my first year as a Marine. I was with 9th Marines Regiment in Okinawa, under 3rd Marine Division, and then got orders to Landing Force Training Command in Norfolk. Like, what the heck is LFTC? That became EWTG Land is like a month after I showed up. And, that was very different than anything I was, thinking I would be doing. It was a definite career broadening tour, but it wasn't something that, it wasn't a B billet, but it was just a different job. But then I went to I&I duty, which, that's kind of off the beaten path too, right? And did well as a captain. And then because you do well as a, captain, my next opportunity as lieutenant colonel, they sent me back to the same place, the same location that I was as a captain, which I thought that was, interesting. I certainly didn't ask for it, but at any rate, and then I think, to your point, with if you're good at recruiting, if you're good in the I&I arena, they tend to send you back. And there's goodness to that. And sometimes maybe you want to do something else, but you have to have faith in the system that the people that are involved with who goes where, that they're looking at this smartly, they're looking at your background. If you're good, they're going to want to put you right back to what you're good at, because it's the needs of the Marine Corps. At least that's what we always say, right?
Well, it did allow me to stay on the West Coast, which was good. I did 2 tours down at 12th Marine Corps District, and then had the opportunity to go to war with RCT1, and then go back to 1MEF. So the Marine Corps did not have a problem with short touring me on my last time out of recruiting duty, again, to send me to to 1MEF. And you're right, I did retire in 2012, about a year after we got back. But I really consider that to be, as a logistician and also as a Marine, just a capstone event. I mean, the Marine Corps grew from 1 infantry battalion, special purpose MAGTF, and then we actually became a fully deployed expeditionary force forward, and later a regional command. I just look back and think of everything that we did collectively, within that 3-year period. And yes, I took a lot of equipment away from a lot of units, at the same time trying to support home station training to be ready and deployable. It was interesting from an enterprise perspective. we always assumed we'd use maritime preposition forces and just fly that stuff in. Well, evidently that wasn't what MPF was for at the time. Which, doctrinally speaking, kind of, threw everybody, everything sort of upended. And no, we're going to source from home station and, source from the depots and do a variety of things, that we've never done before. So, truly a capstone event. And when it came, time to make that transition and retirement decision, I was not disappointed, because I really thought, going out, not only career wise, but just also Marine Corps wise, on a high note, I'm like, I'm just glad I was able to be a part of that.
Yeah, amen to that, Chris. I mean, what you just said is truly significant, because there were a lot of firsts that were being done with the Marine Corps during that time, and you were there helping to lead the way. And the giving up equipment thing is always, it's funny now. It's not necessarily funny when you're doing it, but being at the wing, I was a ground guy, right? I was doing aviation logistics support now, and on behalf of 3rd MAW, and there's a lot of high-speed technical stuff that the Air Wing owns, and you got a lot of smart folks. I mean, I'm not necessarily one of those folks, technically speaking, but it was interesting listening to them describe why they couldn't give something up, right? And it was very technical, and so luckily I had other folks that I could go to at 3rd MAW to kind of decipher what they were saying, and then be able to, go back and say, that's nice, however, but, getting back to, you herding cats, and then going forward with the MEF and the position you filled, that's significant. And in terms of setting you up for, higher level positions outside of the Marine Corps, the experience gained in those few years, I think really served you very well. In fact, the proof's in the pudding, and we're going to talk about that here shortly. But so with that said, if you're good, let's talk a little bit about your time post service. So you retired in 2012, and then within a month, if I am looking at this correctly on your LinkedIn profile, you deployed to Afghanistan for a year. What's up with that?
So we came back in 2011, and unfortunately I couldn't stay with one MEF because they were in the process of building the new staff to then go back and do another rotation in about a year. So I went over to work for Assistant Chief Staff of Facilities at base. I was on the board for 06 for Colonel. I took a pass, and I think that's when I had to, start to develop some realistic expectations about my future Marine Corps career. Was I going to be able to do get up to high year tenure? Did I really want to spend literally at the time, it would have been almost another 7-8 years as a lieutenant colonel, just for the additional retirement pay. Anyway, I decided to retire. When we were in Afghanistan, that was the first time I ever had a LinkedIn profile. I worked on my resume. Maybe I sensed something was in the winds, or just maybe I should prepare, no matter what, and maybe start establishing a profile, a brand image, something to that effect. It did help because I got recruited by DynCorp to become their program demobilization director, or DSCOPE. Basically, my job was to go to Afghanistan and close some of the very bases we opened up about a year before. So I think I took the easy way out. I had a job. I went on terminal leave in April, about a year and some change after we got back. And yes, in July of 2012, I was back in Afghanistan at Kandahar, closing bases. It was really surreal to go down to Camp Leatherneck and Bastion, down to Dwyer, and start talking about plans. Another interesting side note to my transition. I also went through the entire process with Target to become a store team leader or a general manager of a store. Target stores are, $20 to $60 million grossing on an individual basis each year, and this is a decade ago. All the way to the process of I actually did a store team lead shadow, and I worked at a Target for a day. Great company, learned some amazing things about how they do logistics. Unfortunately, I was not hired they did an internal promotion, which I think speaks really well to the company and how they groomed employees to advance. But,
Right.
you know, as I was preparing for this interview, I went back and I really thought about it. Could I have gone from being a lieutenant colonel in camis one day to a welcome to Target in a red, polo shirt, the next day? I think mentally, had I done that, that might have taken a larger toll on my psyche, vice the transition process that's lasted years.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm glad I went.
Absolutely.
I'm glad I went the route I did. I learned some amazing things. It gave me a chance to come home and do some consulting for a year and be a stay-at-home dad, which was great. Something I hadn't had the opportunity, to do. But logically, I always thought I'd end up as a defense contractor or a GS. And when the opportunity presented itself, I'm like, oh, there you go. This is where I'm going to be for the remainder of my second career. So yeah, I sort of jumped into that one with both feet and enjoyed myself for about 4 months before going back over to Afghanistan.
Yeah, and I bet that was surreal, like you said, when you're back, boots on the ground, but you look at your collar, say, hey, what happened? I'm not a Marine anymore, but I'm doing things that are Marine things, or at least related to service, which is obviously a benefit, right? Because that. Through doing what your task was. So you were obviously proficient from the word go on the ground there. And then, so as I'm looking, and as we talked earlier in our pregame call, you were very successful career-wise in your transition. You were thoughtful in what you decided to do, obviously. And, you're back-to-back employed over this, about right. a 10-year period now, a decade. So what do you think, what's some of the success that you had in that? What were some of the things that maybe you can share that folks can take note of?
So I know networking was part of it. Being out there on LinkedIn and having a profile available. I also learned that I had some friends within DynCorp. So I was coming to them as somewhat of a known quantity. So there is value in expanding your network and asking the question, who do you know? Maybe there is a connection or a second, third connection that can, put you in touch with someone so you become more than a profile or a resume. The same thing when I did start looking earnestly, 2013, early 2014, to get back into the job field. I was recruited by a small defense contractor out of Yorktown, Virginia, working with quite a few retired Marines and retired Navy expeditionary folks, senior enlisted.
It's a nice place, by the way, Chris. That's a nice place to live, by the way. When I was I duty, that's where I lived.
I didn't mind going out to visit the company office. I was always treated really well, but I was able to stay here in San Diego. I ran the West Coast detachment for Navy Expeditionary Warfighting Development Center, a team of contractors, one GS, and then Navy subject matter experts from EOD, Coastal Riverine, and of course the Seabee community. So very comfortable talking to Seabees and teaching staff planning, talking about advanced force basing and expeditionary basing and being the logistics subject matter expert. So I didn't have trouble finding jobs, and they were jobs that I enjoyed, teaching and being a logistics me. I was traveling a lot. I still had not quite gotten out of that, that deployable mode. Guam, Bahrain, East Coast, Hawaii, back-to-back RIM packs over 2 years. I was gone a lot, which, takes a toll.
Chris, I don't know whether you can hear me or not, but I think I'm having a technical issue on my side. So give me 1 second. I'm going to have to
we can hear
try to reconnect something here.
Am I still coming through?
You're coming clear to me, Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it might be on Scott's side. It's very interesting what
Can you
you're
hear me?
saying, Chris, by the way. We can hear you, Scott.
Okay. Yeah, it just came back on. Sorry, it was a weird noise, and then everything went silent. So I had to reconnect my earbud here. So I apologize.
No, so as I was saying, had not had trouble finding employment opportunities. I was in the family business. I was, being able to use my logistics background and work with expeditionary types. But I was traveling a lot. And, I don't know if it's so much that I had the travel bug or just the nature of the job, but then you start to think, there's a reason I retired. I want to spend more time with my daughter, my family. Maybe the grass is not always greener. And then I had a profile and an application out on USA Jobs for, I don't know, probably since we retired. And I'd applied for a position as Deputy Force Programs Officer with Naval Special Warfare Command down at Coronado. And I interviewed and I got the job. I was working for a retired Marine 05. Retired Colonel Ipe was in the N4, who we knew from the MEF. And again, I think the networking definitely helped to be able to put a face with a resume and a profile. But again, Hawaii, Guam, there was an opportunity to go back in country. It was, I thought the natural progression of being a defense contractor was becoming a GS, and that's the end all be all. And it didn't quite work out that way. For the first time in my, by then almost 30-year, military and government career, I got sent home as being non-essential during the government shutdown. I ran a force protection and infrastructure security program for probably one of the most secretive commands in the world, and I was non-essential. So that was kind of interesting. In the process, again, someone let me know that there was an opportunity here at the county and the sheriff's department. And in April 2018, I started. And this is probably one of the most purely logistics things I've done, maybe since the DynCorp experience. But I have fleet, I have facilities. I also oversee the records and ID unit, which I don't know how that came under me in the past, but it's funny because I ran a classified knowledge management program, and it segued right in. I'm like, oh, I could do this. This isn't a problem. Ironically, the individual who runs it is a retired Marine senior staff NCO. So that unit's in good hands, and we speak and work very well together.
Absolutely. Yeah. Somebody smart saw that, Chris, and they said, hey, here's the guy that can do just that. Let's put that there with him. Like you said, it being in good hands.
But Scott, I think I alluded to this, or I actually said it right out of my phone call. Employment jobs were never easy. I realize now that I didn't effectively transition more or less until I got into this, current position 6 years later, that I really started to establish myself in my second career. I went to University of San Diego. I've got a Master of Science in Law Enforcement and Public Safety Leadership, so I can better support the industry and the community, I now work in, fashioning myself more as a public safety leader or public safety executive, who just so happens to have a very, logistics heavy responsibility in support services. But, I think my transition is complete, or it's nearing, completion. And now I'm really, trying to improve myself and become the best, public safety leader I can be, as I enter this, this new career path.
Right.
And I think, I know a lot of veterans that I've talked to who stayed in the family business and have had no trouble with employment have said the same thing. I'm not transitioned yet. I still have jobs. Frankly, I'm doing the same thing I did, just out of uniform. I don't know what's on the other side. I'm scared of the private sector. I'm scared of sales. What do you mean public service? What do you mean government? And I've had a lot of similar conversations.
Right. No, I think this is a fantastic segue, setting it up that way, Chris, because military transition, as I want to beat the drum on, is well beyond just the career that you come into. And, when you finally settle on that career, it could be a number of jobs that you go through, different positions, until you find that thing that fits well. Or maybe employment doesn't come right away, and there are challenges there too, right? But it's more than just the career field. There's other things that are happening in life. Life's not stagnant as you're leaving service. Life continues to go on. You can have issues health-wise, relationship-wise. I mean, there's just so many things that you contend with, and then you're becoming this new person. Whether you like it or not, you're not going to be the same person. You might, add a couple pounds. You may, decide, hey, yeah, maybe I don't want to do something similar to what I did, and I want to challenge myself here. So how do you do that? How do you go about that next step? There's so much to consider. And so, you know, along those lines, you mentioned that you're kind of thinking that you're about maybe to the end of some of that transition. It's been a decade, right? So that just should show and tell people that transition is a process, and it is over time, and it's not necessarily, yeah, it's about a year, then you're good. Well, that's not life. And so to that point, what are some things that you can share with us about your transition that, maybe things that were challenging for you, or things that were issues over time with transition, things that you can share with folks who will be coming your way in terms of, hey, I'm leaving the military?
I have always been, and I think even to this day, I'm always scared of taking that next step, or that, that one blind, leap of faith, to see what the next thing is truly going to be. Like I said, when I got hired by DynCorp, I took the easy way out. I could have stayed with them. I did some consulting with them. I was even offered a job in either the Falls Church or the Texas office. But I wanted to be back in San Diego, and I really wanted to see, to see what's next. Although the what's next was something very familiar and very local. Still to this day, I'm scared. But you have to do it. We've got some great resources, family, friends, other people who have gone through it. I've got some tremendous resources and support here. When I enrolled and got accepted to my master's program, a lot of support, people willing to, help me, support me, give me the knowledge and the background as I'm trying to learn something to better myself in my trade. And they're trying to make sure I understand the complexities of the new community and the industry in which I support. And I think we see the same thing on LinkedIn every single day. Hey, nobody's talking to me. I'm afraid to do this. And all the comments basically, hey, talk to me, reach out. We might know someone, or we can at least share that it's okay, to take that leap, because I think many of us, have done it. I'm actually looking at more education. I'm trying to go to the Senior Management Institute for Police in Boston next summer, where I'm one of the few non-sworn guys who's, being considered, to go. So I'm, steel sharpens steel, and I'm trying to sharpen myself, because I'm going to be competing and interacting with some folks who really know the business of policing and public safety. And so, again, every single day I find myself, with another challenge, and you just one foot in front of the other, take the step, take the leap in some cases, and just rely on your network, or just rely on there's some people around you who can maybe soften the blow a bit, although sometimes they're kind of harsh, or at least let we've all been through it and are still going through it. Like I said, a decade's worth of transition, and here we are.
No, absolutely. And, I've, in doing what I'm doing now with What's Next Beyond Service, that is a common theme over, just the amount of time that you're in transition. And I think a couple of things that you hit on are so key. It can be daunting when especially if you've served 20 or 30 years, because you're lock, stock, and barrel part of your service. And leaving it can be daunting. I can still remember very vividly my last day in uniform, and wondering, hey, what's next? It's scary. And same thing, I considered doing the same thing, logistics, supply. And then, for me, I was like, yeah, I think I want to do something different. And so it wasn't an easy path. I mean, things developed, right? I took a few chances, but I also learned some very valuable lessons, because I think I was more trusting of folks than I should have been, and that's on me. It's folks on your left and right in the military, you rely on those folks heavily, you trust those folks, and those relationships aren't necessarily the same on the outside. Not that there aren't good people, but you have to, you have to have your radar up. And I was naive, I think, to that point for my, my personal story. But the other thing you said, Chris, is, other people are out there and they want to help, and you have to be able to see that and, not have the ego that keeps you from, receiving their help. Because sometimes it's hard, because you don't want to maybe admit that you need help, or sometimes you might not realize that you need help. And there are good people that are out there. There are other organizations, there's nonprofits, there are other folks who served in the military who are doing fantastic. And like you, they want to help. And so that's what they do. In addition to whatever they may do career wise, they have their eyes and ears out looking to help folks who served. And it's not just career stuff. It could be other things that are, life issues where they either have some expertise or they know people and they can bring folks together for the goodness of, those that need some assistance.
The culture in which we were raised as Marines, very mission focused, mission oriented. We talk mission type orders. And a lot of times we did things, frankly, to the detriment of other considerations in order to accomplish the mission, whether it be, our own personal health and well-being, maybe the well-being of others, robbing them of precious family time. What's the expression? Just rub some dirt on it, or, just take some Motrin, you'll be fine.
Right.
Well, Motrin doesn't cure some of the things we're dealing with these days, and we can't get some of that time back. I think also part of the evolution was learning to become a different type of man, or maybe expanding what I thought, being a man should be. My daughter actually said she's glad she really didn't know me that well when I was a Marine. I probably wasn't a very nice person to be around, most of the time. I'm evidently a lot more fun some days, except when I act like dad. And that's actually very telling, but I understand, what she means. If you work in a community with a lot of type A personalities, you almost literally have to have your game face on all the time. And you're afraid to let your guard down, you're afraid to show, signs of weakness. Although you have a tight group, you have camaraderie, you have places where you can break down those barriers, and be a bit vulnerable, but it's a lot easier when you're out.
Yes.
And I think that contributes to the way you present yourself, both as a family man, as a business person, whatever industry, you happen to be in. It's okay to not be right all the time. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be wrong. You can create and enable an environment that allows people to grow. I need somebody to come and take my job one day so I can actually, contemplate retirement. And I definitely feel like I'm more on that journey now than I was 10 years ago, definitely than when I was a Marine. Even though we were coaching, we were mentoring, we were trying to get our folks to grow. Maybe I didn't always do that well, and I'm trying to do that now. So that's definitely been part of my transition, other than, say, profession.
Right. Yeah, Chris, that is so powerful. Yeah, well, no, hey, amen, man. But what you said is so powerful, because, in life, we're a lot of things. But when you're in service, you're a lot less of those things, most likely, because, like you said, we're mission focused, and we do let other things go by the wayside. Sometimes we do it knowingly, because we're compartmentalizing because of the task ahead of us. Other times, we just become kind of blinded because that's our drumbeat, that's our cadence, that's what we're doing. And it's not until you have time to catch your breath and reflect, wow, I could have done that so differently. I could have done this better. I should have been more aware of, by me doing this, it's going to have second and third order effects. And, me as a dad too, we're both dads of daughters, and I am absolutely a different person. I mean, not that I was a bad person as a Marine, but same things that you just talked about. And I interviewed a gentleman named Stephen Nesbitt. He was, about a week or two ago. He talked about his time in the Air Force. He was a special forces guy, a para guy, a PJ. But at any rate, he openly shared that his wife told him, our kids they're afraid of you.
Yeah, I got that.
And he was like, oh my God, that really hit home with him. And because he didn't see himself as that way. he saw himself as dad. And, it's funny because I had my kids tell me that, yeah, Dad, all of our friends they're afraid of you. And I thought they were kidding. I thought, I'm like, whatever. No, really,
Talk about
Dad.
that on the phone. Well, Scott,
Yeah.
you had mentioned earlier before the call that, we were making jokes about, if we keep our hair short, people think we're still in the service and maybe we're not that approachable. But the beard kind of softens us up. It is very important to be approachable, whether it's one of your employees who just needs some mentoring and wants to bring you a problem and they don't want to get their head torn off, or someone's trying to approach you for mentoring. And in the context of what I do, I don't have a problem selling anything to my department. It's usually because there's a need, it's intuitive. I need to sell that to the community. I need to sell that to a board of supervisors and other public agencies where I'm in competition for funding. And I need to be approachable. I need to understand that I share and understand their perspectives and concerns. And the person I retired as, who was going to Afghanistan to, bulldoze facilities and bury equipment and close down sites, and this person are completely different. I didn't have to do a lot of selling then. Now I need to be approachable. I need to deal with communities and people who don't have the same mindset as I do, and be able to make the case and also make sure I articulate, their concerns back. So, being that approachable person and being able to really work well with people who are so unlike you, it's crazy, is important. And other than your skills and your professional acumen and education, it's being able to, have those communication skills and maybe some of those empathy skills that we were probably never really good at, but you really have to be, I think, in today's environment. You can't count on everyone on the other side of the table being just like you or just intuitively, understanding it. And, my own development, I think, is definitely helping me toward that end. And I've got some great folks who are more than willing to take some time to coach me. And I think that's awesome too, to still be receptive to that. And realize that some of their perspectives are value added. And I think that's going to be really important for a lot of transitioning veterans, because you take that uniform off and the person sitting across from you in the interview respect what you've done, understand what you've done, maybe value and want to bring that on board, but you've got to be able to sell yourself in a way that they can feel good about bringing you on board. And sometimes it's not always about the knife hands.
That's right.
And that's that's been a definite learning curve for me, and it's been a decade-long learning curve.
Yeah, and well, hey, I'll certify for you right now. Hey, you've arrived, Chris. That was pure gold, man. That
you couldn't every day, man.
Yeah, man, you could not have said that any better. And there is just truth all throughout what you just said. And another theme that I try to make sure I'm hitting on is this thing about building relationships, right? Because that's part of what you were talking about, to be making yourself amenable and open to building and fostering relationships. It's a two-way street. And you're right. The more senior you became as an officer in the Marine Corps, the less you had to necessarily be that way, because if you say, then they do. Now, you want to be smart about what you say and treat your people right and lead appropriately. But, once those things fall off, you're in a very different space in life, and all that's not going to be there any longer. So all the things that you just by default relied on, now you've got to fill that gap. And what do you fill it with? I think what you said makes a lot of sense. And those are the things that folks need to understand before they get out, that, hey, these are the important areas where you maybe didn't touch on because of what you did. And you're going to have to understand it. You're going to have to develop it. You're going to have to get smart on it. You're going to have to open your aperture and start to be a bit of a different person. But I say it's all for the good. And the way you explained it, again, was spot on. So I appreciate that.
And then even more than saying it, I think we all have to embrace the challenge of really giving it our best effort every single day. It's not easy. I don't do it. I'm not going to sit here and be a hypocrite. Somebody's going to call me out if I tried to. It's it's the challenge to actually be able to, do it every single day. And I think that gets back to, the being scared to take that leap of faith or that first step in transition. You just one of the many challenges, just do it, stumble a bit, get back on track, talk to some people who've maybe done it better, pick up a couple of things from their toolkit and keep going. And in this community, there's so many great organizations here in San Diego, and thanks to LinkedIn,
That's right.
To just network like never before. I think when I had the Marine Executive Association, I had the NAVNet breakfast, and to me, LinkedIn was still very fledgling in 2010, 2011, and there are just so many great organizations and just groups of people who have come together since then. And I would encourage everyone to keep taking advantage of them. I mean, I still do to this day. I mean, I can't go to all the events, but I try to maintain some of the very same networking comments or connections. And if something comes across my desk, I want to share it. And I know it's going to go to 20, 30 different organizations and maybe might benefit someone. Definitely huge improvements in the way we can do this networking and assist each other in transition.
Yeah, no, you're dead on again. Yeah, LinkedIn for me, LinkedIn came across my desk at the end of my Marine Corps career. The same timeline as you. I got out in 2012, and I think 2011 is when I first appeared on LinkedIn, and it has evolved hugely since that time. And I do see you on LinkedIn, advocating for helping folks career wise. And it's not necessarily just within your realm, because you're connected with other folks that are in other industries that are hiring. And I see quite often that you will post about positions in different parts of California or maybe in different parts of the country that are opportunities that you see as being legitimate, great positions to take on. And the power that LinkedIn bestows upon us is tremendous if we use it properly. And you completely understand that. And that's how we, again, grow our relationships, staying connected with folks. And I always want to explain to veterans that, hey, you need to make sure that you are connected with people as you're transitioning. Don't walk away from your veteran friends, because your veteran friends can help you beyond the job. They can help you with these other things that come up transition wise, because they've been through it and maybe they experience the things that are coming your way. So they are a huge resource to connect with. But career wise, the obvious implications of LinkedIn is if you're understanding the platform, if you're executing it correctly, you're going to open yourself up to people that are maybe outside of the industry that you're coming from. You're connecting, and maybe you're lucky enough to get interviews that are informational interviews to find out about that organization or that job. And maybe through that, there's another job that is even a better job that you weren't aware of because you made that connection and they said, well, hey, yeah, there is another position. And looking at what you're doing, this might actually be a better fit. So, there's just so much goodness to the networking and, being connected with folks that want to do good like you. So, well, Chris, we're at about 52 minutes into the interview. And what I do want to do is I want to give you a chance to talk a bit about, before we hit record, we were chatting a bit about what you're doing now with the county as the service support director. You talked about, there's a lot of, jobs that are coming or are here now in the county. So if you want to talk about that or, anything else you want to share about, what you're doing in your capacity now with the sheriff's, with the county sheriff.
One of the best things about my job, and I think one of the things that really sort of hits me, sometimes like a wave, is just driving around the county and be able to point to something and go, hey, I had something to do with that, or I can see the obvious benefit for my community. I don't know what's happening at Camp Leatherneck or Bastion anymore, but I can tell you what's happening with the new small sheriff office and library in Borrego Springs and what it means to that community. It's budget season here in San Diego. The county just published the budget today. We're going to go into a month of budget hearings and community engagement groups until final, budget adoption. And then we're going to start off the new fiscal year in July and do it all over again. We're hiring, not just on the sworn side, but on the professional staff side. The county overall is hiring, making such a huge commitment to provide mental health and other services, to, I think, those in our community who really, need them the most, and to try to address homelessness and maybe address some issues that are systemic to communities before they become justice involved. And at the same time, I'm trying to balance support for that. And then, tens of millions of dollars being put into detention facilities, which are not very popular, but at the same time, those in our custody and care receive the best care and service, and we can increase the level of programming again to address things when they return to the community so they don't ever come back. So it's challenging. It's hard to try to sell something like taking care of a jail to a community that just doesn't understand it, and at the same time try to take care of that population in conjunction with our Detention Services Bureau, so they go back out in the community and don't ever come back. I hate the political side of it, but that's what local governance is all about. Literally trying to get people to work together and do things for the betterment of the community. It's not always pretty. I'd rather be out in jeans and boots and a hard hat and vest out on a project. We just opened up a 40-acre vehicle operations course in East Otay Mesa. It's been in the works for 2 decades. We got it done in my first 4 years here, and we still have a ways to go. But man, going down there and cutting loops on the track is not a bad way to spend an afternoon and blow off some steam. But, some days are not like that. Some days are really just being in a room with people that you have a hard time communicating with and trying to do things for the betterment of the community. And I'm happy to be a part of it. I would encourage those who have never thought about whether it's a career in public safety or just a career in local government, health and human services, parks, Department of General Services, the people who help us keep the lights on. And not only this, but look how many municipalities surround, San Diego proper. I mean, our county's the size of Rhode Island, and there are a lot of opportunities that maybe transitioning veterans, like, I never thought I'd work for the city of San Diego or the city of Chula Vista or I would tell you what, probably benefit wise, next to a continuation of a federal career, you might want to check it out. Eventually you start thinking about those things when it comes time to real retirement.
Chris, I can see the Marine Corps recruiter coming out in you very strongly. You're a polished guy, but what
Always
better advocate?
Selling.
Yes. Hey man, you are a phenomenal advocate for the county, for the sheriff's department. And, I've been around the block. I couldn't think of a better person to do what you're doing for the county. And I clearly understand and see that they're aware of that too. When you mentioned about getting in a car and driving out and seeing something that's progressed and about it, I know for a fact that you do know about it because you care, and you take the time to get into the weeds in the appropriate way, to understand and to support people. You were always that way, and I bet they're thrilled that somebody of your caliber is in charge and doing good things. So yeah, that's tremendous.
I think a lot of times when you talk about government in general, too many people are they're swayed by the headlines. Don't believe everything you read. There are a lot of good people in local government, from the board of supervisors down to the 18,000 employees across San Diego County, really trying to do good things, for the community. And the community has just has a lot of needs. It's interesting to see how the sausage is made, some days, good, bad, or otherwise.
No, and I am. You're right. We're all people, and it takes a lot of different folks to do what they do, because we all have different experiences, different backgrounds, different thought processes, perspectives, and they all blend well. If folks understand that, and they're on the same team. So, real quick, Chris, if someone is, you talked about these different avenues to gain employment. What would someone need to do if they're interested? Where do they go to find out what's available and what that process looks like?
So I know one of the biggest repositories is governmentjobs.com, and they are looking specifically at jobs in local municipalities. You can search San Diego. It'll tell you everything, whether it be City of San Diego County, I'm sure, Chula Vista, National City, et cetera. So that's always a really good resource. And you can set yourself up. You can set up alerts. Excuse me. We're talking about the criminalists or the forensic science positions. When you and I had a previous discussion, you can set up an alert and see if those positions become available, if you're interested in a career in parks, or if you're a clinician, governmentjobs.com and set up a search for, the area you're looking for is definitely a good way to go, because it's going to focus on local government. I think, like I said, is we always just think we're going to stay in the federal family business and stay federal, but that's always a really good resource. And then if you find something that's interesting, reach out to me. And a lot of good Marines, as a matter of fact, Chairman Nathan Fletcher has made it a point to say he wants to expand veteran hiring in the county of San Diego, which I think is really encouraging. We have a veteran services office within the county of San Diego, not only for employees who might need veterans assistance, but also, others who would seek to become employed, by the county or look at other opportunities. So I'd say start there. And if you find something interesting, reach out to me, and I'll see if I can connect you to someone who might be able to let you, get one step closer to maybe an interview.
Wow, that's a tremendous offer, Chris. And the fact that you mentioned the supervisor is on board with wanting to do just that, reach out and look to have more opportunities for folks who serve. That's a big deal. A lot of folks talk about it, but not necessarily are they good at executing, what they talk about doing. So that's a good thing to know, and we'll make sure that when we go and publish this interview on YouTube, if you don't mind, if there are any links or whatever that you think would be appropriate for folks, we can add that there in the description part of the interview. So look, we are right on an hour. This has just flown by, and before I want to be a good steward of your time, but I do want to ask you one more thing,
Sure.
because I think this is so important, and I know we did chat about this too, is that sense of purpose. We have an absolute sense of purpose as a Marine, or,
Right.
being in the military. And then when you leave, those things can change. So for you, what have you done? What have you, over this 10-year period, how have you kept that sense of purpose? What are some things that you can share along those lines?
A commitment to myself and my daughter to become, I think, a better parent, a better man who can be a better parent, has been huge for me. A bit cathartic. I wasn't there much when she was, very young, and I needed to own that and do my best. And then I think as I've transitioned and being able to, I like see the fruits of my work and actually be able to, like I said, point to something and go, hey, I've done that, or I've been a part of that, has definitely helped me with that sense of purpose. Much like the Marine Corps, I see people every single day, and my job is pass fail on a lot of occasions. They either get something or they don't, and or the community gets something or they don't, or it's still in the works. And there's a lot of purpose in trying to make that happen every single day. Like I said, it's not always fun. It's not always pleasant, but I think it's a really effective driver when you have to look people in the face every day, and you either support them or you didn't, or the community either got something, or it didn't. It's not always that dire, but it really does help, I think it's a good motivator. And the county motto is the noblest motive is the public good. And, not to sound too hokey, but I believe, there are 18,000 plus people in this county who literally believe that, and do their best every single day. And you know what? There's some really good people here who just make coming to work every day a lot of fun, and that helps too, to be able to foster that kind of environment and just literally enjoy walking in the door or walking out to a job site just to be able to, interact and engage with some of these people. It's not a bad way to spend the day and get paid for it. And
Amen to that.
that's really helped out a lot. I mean, if you're trying to chase a dollar, and it is a consideration, but if you find yourself just going from miserable to more miserable to more miserable, stop. Stop right now and look for something else.
That's right.
And I'm at least happy that when I'll go home and relate anecdotes and we'll have a good laugh and maybe have an adult beverage and commiserate a little bit. But, for the most part, it's just not a bad way to spend the day. And I'm enjoying that.
Yes. And it is self-evident, Chris. You can see it, in your demeanor. And this has been a star-spangled interview.
The cameras don't show all the wrinkles and all the gray, so good.
Yeah, well, I think you were strategic in your distance from the camera too, so you're a smart guy. But no, hey, again, this has been a fantastic interview, and as I mentioned earlier, you are a phenomenal advocate of, the county and what you do. And also as a Marine, once a Marine, always Marine. You live that, you're living it in your current position, and you've grown outside of the Marine Corps, and you filled those spaces appropriately. We're always learning and growing. And another thing you said was important. Definitely. Is, hey, we make mistakes and it's okay. We grow and we learn and we care for people. And, as I mentioned in the very beginning of the interview, that Chris and I, we know each other, we're friends. And what I said about Chris, again, is self-evident. You can see that in this interview that he's exactly the guy that I talked about. So I'm sure that folks that work with you, if they have something that's going on, they know they can go to you and they're not going to lose their head, that you're going to be a reasonable guy and you're there to help and to do what's right at the end of the day. I mean, sometimes, you got to be firm and, it's all situational, but the last thing I'll say here before we go to a quick question and answer is, you brought up not chasing the dollar. That's something I think it's so important. Now, some folks, that's what they want to do, and they'll experience that and we'll see what happens. But I think it is so important to find, if you can find a career path that is fulfilling, that helps with that sense of purpose, that is a win-win-win. Everyone wins with that. Scott, and that's hard to find sometimes.
Calculus. I understand that. I mean, when I compared, if I'd stayed with, special warfare as a GS and looked at the FERS retirement compared to what I would come here in the ST Sarah retirement, it's definitely part of the calculus. And trust me, I'm not trying to say that it's not. But when you put that aside and we make jokes about not a bad place to spend my day every day, I think that has definitely proven to be, the factor that sold me. It sold me over the last 4 years, almost every single day, over and over again. Going into year 5. But I definitely understand that you have to set those goals and figure it out. It's just it's a lot more enjoyable earning it in a place where you're not miserable, if that's possible.
Yes. Yeah. You nailed it again. You got the trifecta going there. So, okay. Well, Chris, if you have, we're about 7 minutes past the hour here. Do you have a couple minutes? If we have any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I know Sarah's gonna, she's gonna have some things. She always takes notes and she asks great questions, and I expect no less. So, Sarah, I'm gonna turn it over to you for a few minutes to do what you do so well.
Oh, thank you, Scott. And then once again, you always bring on the best guests. So thank you, Chris. I just want to thank you so much for the talk today. I appreciate you signing on that line. Me as a civilian, I thank you for that. I just also too, as the power of our story, we're trying to get into that gap where people are not suffering in silence. And you model beautifully what courage looks like on this side. And that is to really be very real of how you felt, the fear, and, kind of how to navigate this whole transition process. So I'm so happy for you that you got this job where you're at now and that you enjoy it. I am so very happy that we are in the same county, that somebody like you is leading the San Diego County Sheriff's, or being the director, and doing what you do in that. So I really do appreciate that. I have ideas that are just exploding, like ways that I would love to get in there with kind of what our platform is all about. We've got like half of the calls on here are first responders and half veterans, and some are both. Actually, I think everybody's both. That's so funny. Everybody on this call is veteran and first responders. Except for Scott, longtime Marine. So anyway, I look forward to connecting with you, because maybe we can support you, your efforts. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you, Scott, for doing this. Do you want me to help with the people?
Sure.
Okay.
Please do.
All right. Looks like Chris has his hand up.
Good morning, Chris. Thank you again so much for taking the time to do this. I think it's such an important thing, and Scott does a phenomenal job trying to help soldiers and veterans and first responders transition out. There's a couple things that kind of struck me that I think are super important, if you could address them from your perspective. One was, you said that you took a year to be a stay-at-home dad, and had you not done that, things might have been different for you. At what point did you come to that realization of that self-awareness to figure that part out? Was that before you did it? Was it after? Was it sometime during the process? And then two, Scott had mentioned something, and again, from your perspective, if you can, he says that we're not the same people we are when we come out, and when you're not a Marine or a soldier, sailor anymore, or a police officer, you're not that same person. I would tend to disagree in a lot of ways. That I think that we do a very good job of indoctrinating ourselves with these identities of being first responders or military,
Right.
And not a very good job of figuring out who the hell we are. From your perspective, how can we change that so that we are the same people that we are when we get out, or at least recognize that, and that we're just going to do a different job?
Right. So for, the first part, so I came back from Afghanistan as a contractor in July of 2013, and I took custody of my daughter. So I was a single dad. So there was a bit of a forcing function there. I decided to consult for my previous company and have the flexibility to be that stay-at-home dad. It was a transition period for my daughter. It was a transition period for me. One of the best things that's ever happened to me, short of actually from becoming a dad in the first place. So there was very much I have to do this, and then it quickly morphed into I want to do this. I mean, we did paddle boards, we did kayaks. I learned how to paint pottery, and just a bunch of neat stuff that I really never had a chance to do before. So, there's a time when we all have to step up and do things, and it quickly just became, one of the best experiences, of my life. And we didn't kill each other, which is great. And she's, 18, getting ready to graduate, from high school and start at Cal State San Marcos in the fall. So I think we both survived, and we both rubbed off on each other a little bit. To your second point, I think it wasn't so much that we forget who we were. We become totally different people. It just sometimes in our previous professions, military first responders, we're so mission focused. We're with type A personalities. We maybe don't allow that that softer side of us to come through, the way we can actually show some empathy and open up to other people and allow ourselves to grow in that way. And so I'm not saying it's the same for everyone. I definitely feel that it's been a growing experience, for me, to how I deal with people, and how I think I try to be more open to understand people, and not always just because it's going to benefit me and I can sell my project or I can get a point across. I just think it's, I was accused of being an early listener, and for someone who instructed recruiters, that's a bad thing to be, especially if you're trying to sell someone. You really need to be a good listener and effective communicator. And someone who I hold very dearly told me that, and I tried to take that on board. And like I said, man, it's been a decade of trying to become that. So I'm not saying forget who you were or become something different. I think it identifies us. I think it's what makes us so valuable in the community. Individuals who still have that sense of service and want to give back and hopefully motivate others to serve in some way. We can learn a lot from some of our civilian brethren and sisters as we grow and try to become, better communities, better communicators, better people as a whole, I guess is where I was going.
Absolutely powerful perspective, Chris. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it.
No, good to meet you, Chris. Good talking, brother.
Yeah, two Chris's there. I'm going to add something to what Chris asked, and then also to what you just said in your reply, Chris Thibodeau. And so let me try to explain what I was saying more, because maybe it didn't come across the right way. And I think it might be a function of what you did in the military, and then how senior you are, because the more senior you become, obviously the more authority that you have, and you're probably a little more busier than folks that are junior. And not that they're not busy too, you're just busy at a different level. And so I think over time, the more senior you become, the easier it is to not maybe rely on soft skills as much when you're looking down. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way. I'm just saying when you're looking down the ranks. Now you need to become polished as you're, dealing with senior folks. So there's a lot that goes into that. But also, all I'm saying is when you leave service, some of those skills you haven't necessarily developed. The ones that Chris talked about that you're going to need when you're dealing with these very different organizations and different people that had different backgrounds that might not relate with your knife hand, with your direct approach, So that's all I was saying there, is that we need to understand that that's coming. What are those areas? How can we become better at those? How can we learn with that? And that's just part of growing. So, take what's good, the good parts of us, hold that tight. But then, as Chris talked about, be looking to grow and educate yourself in those areas that are going to help you help others.
I'm still waiting for somebody to watch this and come back to me and go, "Hey, Chris, when do you start doing that listening thing you talked about?"
That's right. That's right. Hey, Sarah, I'm going to pass it back to you for helping us get through this Q&A.
All right. Does anybody else want to make a comment or have a question? There's some good comments on the chat. So just the way that the chat is set up, sometimes it gets directed to me if we've been in personal contact, so it didn't actually get to the whole group. So anyway, Paul, there you go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chris, thank you for this presentation today. It was incredibly useful on a number of levels, not just about transitioning, but about how your life evolves. And I have a law enforcement background, diplomatic intelligence background. And so my purpose in life did not change, or my view of myself did not change when I took off the uniform for the last time. Instead, what it did is it caused me to look at what I had developed while in uniform and see how I could apply that to what I really wanted to do. And I figured out fairly quickly that chasing the dollars was not for me, because if I learn to help other people in a way that is useful for them, the dollars will follow. And I'm 78 years old and living proof of that. And I guess the next thing is that the difference between command presence and participation or servant leadership is just a rotation that occurs. And command presence is necessary in the Marine Corps or in any branch of the service. It is the way the system works. It is how it's structured. It's how it has worked for 245 years. And it needs to work that way. When you get out on the streets, as it will, creating this attitude of servant leadership where you take the time and the effort to push those around you up to become leaders has incredible value.
It's a great
And
point.
what
Thank you.
happens is that you wind up surrounding yourself with other leaders, which is a great way to live your life.
Yeah.
And I give you Sarah and Scott as perfect examples of that. They're just there, and Angel is as well, and certainly Eric is. But that's a mindset shift, but it is not necessarily a change in how you live your life. And I believe very strongly in the notion of faith, family, community, education, and vocation in that order. And I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not ashamed to say it. That's just what I believe. I believed that way for years. A lot of them, but I view my purpose in life, and it has evolved over time, just as my passion has, and just as my why has, is simply to develop loving relationships and operate in a mode of servant leadership each day. And so I don't compare myself to other people. I compare myself to how was I yesterday? And if there's an improvement, bravo. If there's not an improvement, get off your butt. So,
No, Paul, I think that's great. And, you know, I think a lot of transitioning, you know, veterans and first responders, or anybody going through any sort of career transition, you know, perhaps they are their toughest opponent, and maybe having that sort of, you know, face value self-assessment on a daily basis, you know, definitely helps. Did I do good today? Yes, no. Can I do better tomorrow? You know, I think the answer is probably, you know, always, as they go into that transition journey, or, you know, looking for whatever's next.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Paul, thank you for that.
It looks like
You're
we
welcome,
might.
sir.
Oh, Eric, did you want to make a comment? I see that your mute is off.
I'm sorry. I don't have a camera working today, but I wanted to say I really, really appreciate hearing this, Chris and Scott, and especially with Paul there. I do believe that that's the thing that you see the young men and women, you know, as we do grow in our leadership and then in our responsibilities, you tend to have to, you know, to mute your the hand chop, as you say, when you're trying to help people to get their direction, or especially if they make decisions that they want to leave the service or to transition to other things, and how to help them. I find that, you know, it's venues like this that we have to kind of to find the different ways and the people to connect them to. You know, it is difficult. I had mentioned to you about that, Sarah, about that whole thing of when you transition from the military, we often have that, but we want to find the same kind of camaraderie or organization that, you know, we had to try to step out and go to do something totally different. Like Chris, you said about, you know, going to Target, you know, it becomes one of those things where it's like, am I going to fit in here? What, you know, I mean, I'm only used to wearing one kind of uniform. How am I going to pick different shirts? Well, here's an organization that gives me the same shirt every day. You know, you know, and I think that's the thing. we have. So when you said, about the different opportunities that are great there, I think that's one of the things that I'm taking away, because I have people that I know that have children that are considering, what do I do after the military? What do I do after, this, and a lot of them think the only thing available is federal service.
Right.
Thanks so much for letting me, hear that.
And the other thing that I've realized too is that, just having worked in local government for the sheriff's office for the last 4 years, the outreach and the networking within the county is not just the county employees and those direct departments. They partner with so many nonprofits and non-governmental organizations throughout the county, providing a host of services. And those offer some very viable, career paths too, that had I not been exposed to this, I probably would have never considered it, or not worked to maybe get involved, with a few of them. So it's definitely been an eye-opening experience. Just a short story, but a nonprofit that we've donated to, and we try to stop in and see them every now and again, mentioned having difficulty getting someone into transitional housing, because of an issue. And I said, "Here's my card. Here, let me take your card. Maybe I can, just try to network with some people, to help you out and see if we can, come up with a better outcome." And so I was actually surprised at just the power of networking outside of the norms that, like we're talking about transition and veteran service organizations. It's just powerful, throughout, I think, your interpersonal relationships. And as we deal with the community, you build some bonds and some ties that you would have never thought of before. And that's been rewarding on a whole new level.
Yeah, I don't see anymore.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I was just thinking, gosh, that is so true. The network, it is so powerful. I'm seeing things even on this platform too, of people just getting to know each other, share their stories, networking, and really moving forward together in really cool projects, besides for the support on the mental health and all the newness of transition. And
right.
So, Scott, I don't see, unless Angel, do you have any comments, or I don't want to?
Yeah, I'm just going to throw in one quick comment there. Chris, when you had made mention to the fact, your relationship with your daughter and saying, there is that fear base. I had mentioned that to Scott and my own, that, I came to a reality check is when my own son, he was having a night terror, and I went to go, I was at home. And I went to go see him. He goes, "I don't want you." And he's like pushing me away. It's just like, I want and he just named the babysitter's name. I'm like, wow. As a mom, that was a pretty hurtful impact. And then as you grow, as I got out of that service and you're trying to rekindle those relationships, sometimes that takes some time. So we really do also not just look at our professional lives, but like you said, you do have to make that bond, spend quality time to rekindle those personal relationships too. Critical. You have to
do it while you can, because they become teenagers, and then they go off and they start forming their own identities in their own lives. So those are some precious moments. Like, we had lunch on a random Saturday. I'm like, I gotta post a picture. I'm actually having lunch with my daughter.
That's an expert on empty nesting.
Well, yeah, it's,
and I don't say that
Chris,
pejoratively. He's really had the experience recently.
Well, yeah, I'm blessed with a fantastic partner, my wife, and she keeps me straight in a lot of areas, and she's helped me through that to be a better dad, certainly. And I think I shared with Chris, being a dad of daughters, I think as a guy, it changes you. If it doesn't, then, you need to be a better listener, like Chris said, but then also be and be a better doer too. I think I'm a much better person and a much better man from, for having daughters as well. And again, having a wife that coaches me through some of the things that I probably would have really stumbled hard or fell flat on as a man interfacing on issues, with your daughters. But when Chris shared that story with me about having lunch with his daughter, and, she reached out to him and said, "Dad, let's have lunch." And he was like, "Holy smokes." Yeah. I mean, that's pure gold right there. Those are fantastic times.
No, and I apologize if I didn't mention this, and I'm so glad, Scott, you mentioned your wife and partner, but I've had an amazing partner for the last 8 years who's stepped in to become a stepmother to Morgan. And where Dad got too soft, she stepped in to be the hammer. Much like, Paul said, that family and faith, it's definitely one of the pillars, that you have to have. And if she didn't get anything else from me, if she steps out on her own and that's part of her, part of her guide, serves as one of the points in her compass. And, I think that's good too. And I'm not afraid to say it either. And, I think a lot of the people that we interact with, look at us better, because we're not afraid to be that parent out there, as much as that professional, as much as that, whatever, other identity, you wear. It's definitely helped me out a lot. Good parenting stories often serve as a good icebreaker.
Oh, isn't that the truth? That's right. Well, Sarah, I guess that's looks like probably the end of the Q&A session here. I want to thank you, as always, Sarah, for your help and goodness in doing just that. Chris, this has been an incredible interview. Thanks also for your additional time here with the question and answer. That always adds, extra value to these interviews.
Well, Scott, I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you, and thank all of you. I really appreciate what you do, and I know a lot of people appreciate it too. And I didn't think I had anything to talk about, so I apologize if I took too much time.
No, hey, yes, wonderful indeed. This couldn't have gone any better. And you're so personable. I think folks are going to really get this interview and the things that you talked about. You sewed them together so well. A learning experience for everybody. And I know I'm repetitive in saying this, but this brings so much value to me too, because it is so good to hear other people's stories and to learn from others. We never have it all. And we have to remember that there are different experiences and they affect people in very different ways. And so sharing that with people is what this is all about. And I wouldn't be sitting here now if it wasn't for Sarah. Sarah reached out to me, more than a year ago. And so here we are today, working together to help folks. And this is, it's a good thing. I'm in a good space, and I'm very happy to be here. And thank you for saying that, Chris. So
okay. Scott, that's a great way to sum it up. It's try to get yourself in a good space, man. That's it's succinct and it's perfect.
Amen. Well, that concludes this episode of What's Next Beyond Service. Chris, again, fantastic interview. Thanks to everyone who tuned in today. This will be going over to YouTube, and you can see it under Sarah Carell's The Power of Our Story. I'll post on LinkedIn, give a couple minute clip of this interview, and ask folks to when they have time to sit down and take this all in. You can do it on a drive if you're in traffic, or on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee. Yeah, what better way to take part of what we've got going on here. So, all right. Well, hey folks, have a great rest of your day. Have a good weekend coming up. Cinco de Mayo. Probably don't need to say anything more than that. So God bless, and you guys take care.
Thank you. Take care.